here in July to still be able to bring what I think is a very important piece for NCCAA, and I think you'll enjoy it. Let me read you a little of the background for this session. The original goal of your administration committee when it confirmed this session in December was for a session to hear from individuals who represent groups that at times are in an NCCAA minority position, mainly females, coaches, and people of color. Our membership shows that 19% of our head coaches in the NCCAA or less are females, although female sports represent about 47% of all of our sports. On top of that, NCCAA institutions average about 12% or less minority population, with the majority of that population being in intercollegiate athletics or on rosters. Thus, the panel that we have created for today that I think you will thoroughly enjoy. Before we meet them, join me in a word of prayer. Lord, thanks for this day. It's the only Tuesday we get this week. May we make the most of it. I pray that we will honor you in our words and time here over the next 50-some minutes, and that what we do will honor you and allow for growth and improvement within NCCAA, but most importantly for the kingdom. For it's your name we ask it. Amen. A couple of ground rules that I think you'll find helpful. One, if you will, keep your microphone on mute throughout the session. We are going to ask that if you have questions at any time, post those in the chat, and I'll take care of getting those over to our moderator via text so he can utilize them as we have time. We can't guarantee we'll get to any or all, but we will if we have time. Also, if you want to use the speaker view on the Zoom screen, it will bring up typically who's speaking for you in that case. I want to introduce everyone who'll be part of this now for the next 50-some minutes. Our moderator is a dear, dear friend. We are of similar age demographic. His name is Tony Eubanks. He was a former All-American at Tennessee Temple, and you'll hear more of his story. But he is a youth evangelist and evangelist for the kingdom. He's worked with SCORE Ministries, who's a major partner with NCCAA. And it is an honor to have him moderate our time today from here in Simpsonville, South Carolina. Torey Rosen is no stranger to NCCAA. She was a three-sport standout, making All-American first team in women's volleyball and women's basketball at Maranatha Baptist University now, Maranatha Baptist Bible College at the time. In 2013, she was our overall NCCAA Game Plan for Life female student athlete. She went on from there to be a graduate assistant at Cedarville University and served as women's assistant volleyball coach there as well, and has since returned to her alma mater and to Wisconsin as the women's assistant volleyball coach and men's volleyball head coach for a time. She now is the wife of one and mother of one, and her days are full, and we welcome Torey to our panel. Next is Dr. Vicky Denney. Dr. Denney has been involved with the NCCAA since 1982. She has been at Clearwater Christian College. She has been at Maranatha Baptist University. She has been at Bob Jones University. She has over 1,100 wins as a head coach. She has 16 national championships. And if you know her, you know those are not the most outstanding qualities or things of her resume. She has served on the NCCAA board since 2005 in some role, either as president, as past president, and now as an at-large member of our administration committee. She's seen a lot of changes and growth within NCCAA, and Vicki, we welcome you to the panel. Martin Schiele brings us our young demographic, or young us demographic. He's a 2020 of Grace College and Seminary. He'll be also finishing up his master's degree in business administration here shortly. He also has part-time, he's a minister evangelist. He's a mentor to kids, gives back to several charities. He played basketball for 3 years for Jim Kessler there. He also ran track there. He was part of their chapel worship team. And we had the great privilege a couple of years back at the National Basketball Championship to hear Martin be part of a panel And it didn't take long when we were trying to craft this panel for us to want to include him. And so we're thrilled to have Martin be part of this, and welcome from Hammond, Indiana area. I think maybe being mobile right now, if I understand right, Martin. Finally is Willie Williams. Willie Williams was a student athlete at Grace University and also at Nebraska Christian College. He also then served at Grace University as a men's basketball coach and athletic director and an athletic recruiter before spending the last 4 years back at Nebraska Christian College as men's basketball coach and as an athletic director. He has most recently made his way across America and is now in Winston-Salem, North Carolina at what was Piedmont International University, and if you don't know, is now known as Carolina University as of, I think, last week. So Willie, welcome to the panel. At this time, it's my honor. I'm going to turn things over to Tony Eubanks, who's going to open up with a little bit of his story, and then he'll bring our panel. So enjoy my NCCAA journey.
I sure appreciate it. Dan, thank you for that introduction. I am so impressed by listening to your introduction, especially Dr. Denney, who has 16 championships. I only have 3. It makes me look a little lost on that. But anyways, we won't talk about that. But I am excited. I've shared with you guys earlier, I'm excited about being a part of something unique and special. I think when Dan had lobbied me, for a lack of a better word, to be a part of such a topic, 40 years ago, I would have not even thought about where God had placed me. I was an All-State McDonald's All-American basketball player in Nashville, Tennessee. Graduated, went to sign a letter of intent to University of Mississippi, and played there for 1 year. And again, for the sake of time, I enjoyed my time at Mississippi. I had several mentors there. I had people there that kind of took me under the wings. And I want to preface by saying, I want you to think about, speaking of diversity, that it's only been 12, 13 years since I got to the University of Mississippi that they even had a Black American at the University of Mississippi. Also remember, I'll share this in another form, that we're only 40, 50 years removed from voting rights, things of that nature, drinking out of the same water fountain. And to say we've come a long way, we have come a long way in a short period of time. So I wanted to preface just to remind us, even at the University of Mississippi, by the way, the lady that took me in as one of my mentors at the University of Mississippi was Leanne Roberts. And for those of you guys who don't know who Leanne Roberts is or was, if I say Leanne Tui, you would know who she was and or is. And if you watch the movie Blind Side, that was her. Really helped me through my first year in college. With that being said, I really felt we're talking about two dynamics here, and I want us to move in that direction when we talk or when we speak on this thing of diversity and moving forward with the NCCAA. One of the things that we have to take in consideration is the calling of God on people's lives. That's what happened in my life. I was called by God. I had people in my life who said, hey, you want to be a pastor? I wanted to be a youth pastor. And this is how you become a youth pastor. You got to go to school. You got to learn. My dad used to say, school's not for everybody, but it's for you. And so I was at school. I did a lot better in college. I signed a letter of intent after I left Ole Miss to Tennessee Temple University. Here's the unique thing about Tennessee Temple. I want us to make sure that we understand that the people around me, my culture initially when I grew up was not Tennessee Temple. Okay, it wasn't a Christian school. It wasn't an education. I was not learned that way. I just was so happy to get a scholarship, go to school, play basketball, and get out. But the calling of God on my life assured me that when I had these people around me, it really helped me to kind of formulate where I was going to be and what I was going to do in life as a Black American, even coming from, born in Nashville, even coming from Mississippi. So as we talk today, I know even with all of us, we're going to find out that there are people around in our culture now that help direct us. The Holy Spirit uses to move us to these institutions, these great schools of Christian education. So my background, I went to Tennessee Temple. I'll share a little bit more about my experience there, but being there was good for me. Now, keep in mind the things that I had to do and was a part of, it really didn't bother me to be around white folk, okay? Just go ahead and throw that out to you. Because my dad said school's gonna be important to me. And so I had to understand that. Now, taking the trash out, my dad was an Army guy. We got demerits if we didn't take the trash out. We had to be on time at 10 o'clock at night. We had some rules and regulations that I wasn't familiar with, but I had a father, I had some mentors in my life that taught me how to do those things. Nowadays, we don't have that kind of fatherhood, to be quite honest with you. I don't know if we are in a place where if you have an Anthony or a Tony Eubanks come out of high school, where he is generally discipled, mentored into a place, an institution, a Christian school, where he can know that education is more important than his surroundings and the things that have gone on in history and of that sort. So I had it pretty good. I enjoyed my time at a Christian school. I didn't have any problems. People say, well, did you have any issues? And I did have some issues when it came to dating and things like that, and relationships. And I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit of that a little bit more, because at the time, Tennessee Temple was the second largest school in Tennessee, second largest private school in Tennessee, second to Vanderbilt. We had 5,000 students. So if that being said, when I got to Tennessee Temple, it was truly Caucasian born and fed. It was all over the place. It didn't bother me as such because my dad, again, was in my life, and he said, you get your education, don't you worry about those people. And I understood that. I moved forward. Now, again, as we go through this conversation, we're going to have, I'll share a story with you that will kind of touch the base of moving on. What are some of the tangibles we can do to help generate this diversity movement within the NCCAA that we're trying to partake in? With that being said, I'd like to move on to the 16 world champion lady, Dr. Denney. Do you mind kind of give us your story and your journey with where you've been?
Thanks, Tony, and that just means I've been at it a long time. Just a brief background. I started my college coaching career at Maranatha Baptist Bible College before Torey was born. Back in those days, I taught a full load of classes. I coached every sport they had for women. I was the coach, and became involved in the NCCAA as they had their first ever national tournament in 1988 at BBC Clark Summit. So in my 6 years at Maranatha, I was the only head woman coach on staff. Then I moved on to Clearwater Christian College in Florida. And it was during that time that I became more familiar with the NCCAA As we became involved in regional and national volleyball tournaments, we even hosted the national volleyball tournament in 1997 and 98. And it was, again, during this time, I stepped into more leadership roles as regional volleyball chair, and then I served as the national volleyball chair for 4 years. I spent 26 years at Clearwater Christian College, and during that time, I only had the opportunity to have 2 other head women coaches during those 26 years, and they came and went quite quickly. And then once Clearwater closed in 2015, I joined the coaching staff at Bob Jones University, another NCCAA member school. And currently, I'm the only head woman coach on staff. And so I just wanted to share a brief background to say there's a common thread. I hope you caught it. Throughout my time at 3 different NCCAA institutions, where are the women? Where are the female coaches? Where are the female ADs within our organization? You know, over my 38 years connected with this organization, I've seen some women come, most of them leave. And my question is, why do we lose our best and our brightest? And it's just not the women, it's the men too. Why do we lose them? And I did a quick count. Dan gave us some statistics there at the beginning. I went back and I just counted the number of athletic directors who are women in our organization. And as of last year's handbook, we had 3 women ADs at the Division I level, and 2 of those schools are associate members. And then we had 2 women athletic directors on Division II. I didn't go back and look at all the female coaches, but from Dan's statistics and just from my own experiences, I'm just not seeing a plethora of women coaches within our organization. So my question is, how can we turn around that trend? How can we recruit and retain more quality women coaches and then athletic directors? And so I'm going to speak to that a little more later, but again, it's just a burden on my heart as I'm kind of on this downward slope of seeing how we can encourage women within our organization.
That's great. I really appreciate your words, and we're looking forward to get right back to you. I don't think Martin's in yet, so let's go to Torey Rosen, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
All right. Well, for my journey through the NCCAA, it began in 2007 when my family moved from Illinois to Watertown, Wisconsin, where my mom started working at Maranatha Baptist University. At the time, I was still in high school, but the move came at a really good time for my family, as well as making my college decision process a lot easier. So after graduating from the academy at Maranatha, I began attending the university in 2009. And a reason I enjoyed playing at Maranatha, being in a D2 school in the NCCAA, it was because of a lot of the opportunities I had to participate in 3 different sports and just be involved in a lot. And I know at other colleges, I probably wouldn't have had those opportunities. And my time as a multi-sport student athlete is definitely one I wouldn't have traded for anything. Many of my opportunities and memories I had from playing sports in college was through NCCAA events, specifically for the volleyball and basketball regional national tournaments. Having something to compete for in the postseason and going on trips with my teammates are things we still talk about today. And my most memorable opportunity came from being recognized by the NCCAA as the Volleyball Player of the Year in 2012. And that led to representing the NCCAA at the AVCA National Coaches Convention, where players from all associations and divisions are recognized. And being able to have that platform to represent Maranatha and the NCCAA was something I didn't take for granted, and I look back at with very fond memories. It was a really, really awesome event. Then my next step in the NCCAA actually started at this convention. Another NCCAA coach at the convention found me during the event to congratulate me and encourage me. And while talking with her, I mentioned that I had been looking for a GA position so that I could coach at a college level and work on my master's degree. And up until that point, I was pretty discouraged because most of these positions had already been filled. and I was about to move on with plans for what I would do after college. But she mentioned that she heard that Cedarville University, which is an NCCAA Division I university, was looking for a GA. So I emailed my resume to the head coach of Cedarville, only to hear back that they had just finished the position, leaving me back at square one. But within that same week of emailing the coach, I heard back from him again, saying that their original candidate fell through and that they'd like for me to come to campus for an interview. And that right there to me was just a huge open door that I could see where God was leading in my path. So after I visited, I was offered the position and I gladly accepted it. And then in my 3 years at Cedarville, I received my Master's of Education while serving as the assistant volleyball coach, which was a great experience to work in a bigger school and at a different level than what I had played at. I learned a lot and I love my position, and it gave me a much better perspective of where I wanted to be in the future for coaching as far as the program type and level and the environment of school that I would want to be at. Then after my time at Cedarville, the Lord saw fit to move my husband and I back to Wisconsin for my husband's work. Being back in Watertown, I couldn't help but not be involved in athletics. So I've spent 3 years back at Maranatha coaching, which led me to be the head coach for our men's volleyball program and help transition it from the club level into an NCAA Division III and NCCAA Division II program. And getting things started for the program, there weren't any postseason opportunities yet for the guys, and I was really wanting that experience for our team. So I was honored to help get the ball rolling for an NCCAA Men's National Invitational Tournament, which has been a great experience for our guys team so far. So overall, I'm just grateful for the NCCAA and all the opportunities it has provided for me in the 10 years I've been able to play and coach at NCCAA in institutions.
Great, thank you very much, Torey. Let's go to, I think Martin is with us. Martin Schiele, are you there?
Yes, sir, I'm here. I am here.
All right.
I was having some technical difficulties, but I appreciate you having me on this call. It means a lot. But I'll start off by just saying that I had my experiences at Grace was one of those things where it was least expected. To give some background, I came from Griffith High School, and I was getting recruited by higher tier schools going into college. And then a horrific bus accident had happened to where our bus had flipped over into a ditch on our way to semi-state. And it flipped over into a ditch and caused us to postpone our game back, a few days or whatnot. And then from that, my recruitment went down. And of course, I didn't have much of an opportunity to go to those schools. And in fact, they're actually rejected and took away my scholarships that I had for both track and basketball. So that kind of, ruined everything. But then Coach Kessler reached out to me and offered me a full ride scholarship to play basketball. Then track came in and gave me another partial so that I can be able to play.
Uh-oh. Did we lose him?
On track too. So from that, I had. Can you guys still hear me? Okay.
Yeah, we got you.
Then from there, okay. And then from there, my experiences at Grace was very difficult at first. It took me about 2 weeks to find somebody that was my skin color. It's predominantly white school. And then from there, I had God convicted my spirit and told me that, in order for you to engage and seek change, you have to be the change yourself. You have to go outside your comfort zone to ensure that you're not only engaging, but you're being intentional behind what you're doing. And because I thought the world should come to me since I'm a minority, but for me to promote change, I have to come to the world. And I think that's what's happening right now in the shift that's happening with police brutality and everything that's going on, is that the intentionality of what people are doing has got to change. They have got to come from a pure heart. Not only does this happen from the governmental standpoint, but also as athletes and administrators within NCCAA. We have got to govern ourselves to the point where what we do are consistent with what God instructs us to do, but also being intentional with what's going on. And I think that that's the underlying basis behind what's going on right now. And secondly, too, I think that the basis of everything is spiritual. I believe that, you know, in order for things to change, in order for promotion to happen and things to actually shift in our lives, we have got to fight the spiritual with the spiritual. We cannot fight the natural things with the natural. So I think it's one of those things where if the NCCAA can see that what the root of what's going on right now is primarily just spiritual, I think that we can approach this and the solution would be something spiritual. And you might be asking, well, what's spiritual? You can attack the things that's of this world with the word of God. You can attack these things with the world, the way you conduct yourself that is influenced by the word of God. And I know for me, in my experiences at Grace, I had to stop being so prideful. I had to stop being so inconsiderate and put the love of God within my heart so I could promote the change that I wanted to see in my experiences at Grace. And from there, I was able to talk to various people and start to disciple and start to speak at different churches because I had a change of heart. But not only did I have a change of heart, but I was intentional about what's going on. So if it's one thing that you guys can take from this, is that if you want to promote change, one, you must be spiritual. You must be rooted in God to propel you to what lies ahead. But secondly, be more intentional. Don't let this be just something that is just for the moment, just because it's going on. But even outside of the spectrum of what's going on right now, are you having dialogue and open conversation with people outside of your gender, your ethnicity, your customs, your way of living? Are you having these conversations? That's where the change happens. It does not happen when stuff is going on and is relevant. Change happens when nobody's looking around. Change happens when there's just nobody in sight, but change happens within yourself. And if it can happen within yourself and it happens when nobody's looking, then the world will start to do a change. So appreciate you guys for having me.
Willie, thank you. I know at some point in time we'll all be at your church to hear you preach for sure. So that's good work. I think Willie Williams is next. I'm sorry, Martin. Willie Williams, go ahead.
Yes, sir. So, I've been involved with the NCCAA as a coach, as a player, as a coach, and as an administrator for the last 16 years. And it's really by the grace of God that I was able to even get involved with that, because I was planning to go to a community college out of high school. But my girlfriend, who's now my wife, she was planning to go to Nebraska Christian College because her family had gone to Nebraska Christian College. So it was just crazy how God has used that and really just set the path for my life and our life together. And so as a student athlete, coming in, I was able to, just felt with open arms, honestly, people welcoming as I came in. However, I was personally at that time going through identity crisis from two aspects, a spiritual aspect, being raised Catholic and, so what are all these rules and tradition versus I'm hearing about a personal relationship with Jesus and not really quite understand what that meant. And then obviously a racial identity crisis, having a white mom, a black dad. And then, as I'm playing, I'm at a almost all white institution, playing against other institutions that are mostly white, if not all white, but then being told you're black, and so just really trying to kind of go through that, wrestle with those two aspects of identity. But, my experience, man, it was great. I got to compete, with for championships, which was great competition. I had the privilege of winning a national championship with the NCCAA my senior year, which was awesome. Experience is just one I'll never forget. Developed lifelong friends. Some of those guys were in my wedding, and still I talk to this day. Coaches, some of my best mentors that help right now are part of my small circle are former coaches. And then really just coming to know Christ. I mentioned personal relationships. So that's all happened as a player and something I'm forever grateful for, because again, it shifted my path that I was on. And then being able to have the opportunity to come back and be an institution as a coach, that's a real, it was just a different experience as far as, being able to then see, okay, so now I'm at a predominantly white institution on staff. So what's that look like? And then really now I'm bringing in other minorities you know, and quite honestly, the institutions I was at loved that. They thought it was great bringing in diversity. However, and we could talk a little bit about this later, the institutions, without directly saying this, they didn't realize that what they wanted was, they say diverse culture by bringing in minorities, but really what they wanted was assimilation, you know? So they wanted you to come and be a part of what we are. And I think there's a balance there, as opposed to being able to celebrate having inclusion and acceptance and really a culture that just celebrates other cultures. You get what I'm trying to say? And so, and I'm not sure we're there yet, to be honest with you, with the number of institutions, at least in my experience. And so that's been a learning curve. You know, you look at different aspects of that. Like I said, we can talk about a little bit more, whether it's chapel or academics or even just the athletic programs and stuff. And so, but I will say this, something that's been very consistent as a player, as a coach, as an administrator, is that, you know, Christ hasn't changed. And honestly, the people that in these 16 years that have just had influences in my life, I mean, they've all had something in common, and that was just their love for the Lord and their love for others. And that's something that I'm very thankful for in my experience. Like Dan said, I was able to play at Nebraska Christian College, Grace University. I've had the privilege of actually coaching at both those universities, and then to be here at Carolina University, all NCCAA member schools. It's just truly a blessing, you know, to be able to be in an institution that actually says, hey, it's okay to go pray. You know, it's okay to promote God. It's okay. Like, that's part of what we want. You know, discipling, you know, a lot of that Proverbs 27:17. So that's kind of just in brief my story and where I'm at right now, and just excited to be a part of this.
Well, thank you again, Willie. Appreciate that, and appreciate our panel. I know we've already kind of discussed where we want to go next with this. I think most of us obviously are indigenous to the process. We kind of know what's going on. We smell the roses, okay? We know exactly what we need to do. We just kind of trying to get there to figure out this diversity, whether it's our challenge with people of color, or with women involved with our sports, and kind of cover the gamut on that end. When I was in school, the diversity issue was more relative, for lack of a better word, to history. And that's shocking, I know, because what happens is, I think Willie touched on it a little bit. When you go into a place and you are an African American, or even a woman with many men dominated area, you tend to kind of step back a little bit, and you say, I don't know. And my dad used to say, you know, son, a dog can't see very well, but he can smell very well. And you can kind of tell people who like you and people who don't like you. And so we just want you to know that if you're out there, we already know you. The Bible's really clear in Isaiah that the expression on your face is giving yourself away. And so that's not the challenge for us. The challenge today, as Dan and I was talking, is to help bring awareness, not just awareness, but put boots on the ground, okay? We're gonna have this hour-long meeting, but we've got to begin to put boots on the ground to help formulate these ideas, put them into practice, not just us as women, as men, as African Americans, minorities, people of color, not just us, but the masses. And so my next question to the panel, or my thoughts to you guys is, what are some of the things that we can do to move? What are the realities? What are some of the things that we can move and we can say, hey, this is, and I know Martin touched base on some of them, but I want to hear from each of you on some of those tangibles that we could do to formulate our ideas and just move it to practice. Go ahead, Doctor, if you don't mind.
Well, when I think about, we're trying to create a culture to promote diversity, right? We're trying to create this culture that does have inclusion, that does have sensitivity, that does have awareness. We say the right things, and yet again, over my time, how much have we really seen change? A lot of good changes within the NCCAA. I don't have time to go through all those changes. Battles that were fought, battles that were won. Under Dan Wood's leadership, we've come a long ways over my time with the organization. But here are some thoughts from me, what I think can help us create this culture to promote diversity. And again, I'm speaking from the female perspective, but it could be, minorities, ethnic groups. So first of all, from my perspective, we need to recruit, train, and retain these people, right? For women, we need to be looking for quality women. Too many times I hear an athletic director say, well, I just couldn't find a good female candidate. And I'm like, there's none out there at all, really? And then they're hiring someone they know from somewhere else. And so that, I hate to say the good old boys mentality, but the idea of really recruiting, and once we get them on our staff, not just leaving them to, flounder, but to actually provide leadership opportunities, to train them, to provide, to give them a voice, to allow them to speak freely without being judged.
Let me ask you a question, Doctor, real quick, if I can. What is the makeup of your, where you are now in the institution? Is it especially along the lines of women? Where are you with that?
Right, within our
administration.
Right, within our athletic department, I'm the only head woman coach. We have a couple of assistant women coaches, but I am the only head woman coach.
All right.
I think the more we can encourage, and then we can come alongside, and the people who have the power, the people who are the athletic directors, by and large, are the men. And so, in my experiences, often because I tend to be a pretty, dominant type of female, I threaten them, right? So I have had to learn to step away from that, and to be able to converse and not be a threat, to really be like on the team. I don't necessarily have to be the leader of the team, but I want to be on the team. I want to have opportunity. I want to have a place at the table. And, the other thing I was just thinking about, like for myself, really being asked to be on the NCCAA board in 2005 was a huge opportunity for me, because it really was at that time my eyes began to be open to the organization, and I was able to meet some really quality people who really did believe in this idea of diversity, that really did want to give women and minorities opportunities within the organization. So in my little world, I wasn't seeing it, but once I got into a broader venue like convention, I began to meet individuals that I really respected, and I really saw that they really did have a burden to make some changes. And so, I just think getting more of our women who are within our ranks, get them to convention, let them have opportunities to network, let them have opportunities to sit and, just talk one-on-one with people from a variety of backgrounds. This idea of creating a culture to promote diversity, it really does have to begin grassroots. It has to begin with individual schools, individual athletic directors, really wanting to not just say we're doing it, but to really on purpose do it. And, one last thought, because this might be my last time, we're a Christian organization, right? And so we should recognize that we all have gifts and abilities. God has gifted us, and regardless of our, gender, our ethnic group, our race, regardless of that, we all have something to bring. And so allowing us to bring those qualities to the table, really, we're just exercising the gifts God's given us. And regardless of race, gender, ethnic group. And if that happens, then, you know, I think everybody wins. And so that would be my prayer, that we just allow people to exercise the gifts and abilities and try to recruit and retain these, specifically women in my case. Thank you.
Great words, Doctor. Thank you. Now, Torey, on to you, please.
All right. So for me, as a student athlete, I never really felt that I had any struggles or limitations based on being a female with any of competitions or what we were provided. So I felt like I was very blessed with a lot of opportunities and platforms that I was able to represent Christ and Maranatha as a Christian athlete. And at the time, as a student athlete, you don't really know too much of what goes on behind the scenes as far as what decisions are being made throughout the athletic department. So I can't really speak for any of those kind of scenarios, apart from my perception of the situations, experiences I was in from a student athlete. As a coach, I would like to tag along with Coach Denney, because I definitely have seen a distinct difference in the coaching personnel being predominantly male at both of the universities that I've been a part of. But I feel like in some instances, they have made me be able to speak up and fight harder for what I felt my program needed. Or again, that could have just been my perception of the pressure I was putting myself, or just maybe it's just a opportunity to allow growth in my own life. And again, I'm all for more female coaches, but I also like to have a strong coach with quality philosophies and just good execution in the right positions. And again, as already been mentioned, a lot of those could be female coaches, and some of them could be the male coaches that are currently in those positions. So again, for me as a female coach, I am actually currently stepping away from coaching to raise a family and also help with my husband and I's new company. So in a way, I kind of understand why this ratio is somewhat lopsided. As I mentioned, a big part of it was raising kids and raising a family right now. But coaching is definitely something further down the road that I have full intentions of getting back into, and I look forward to that day where I can have the time to get back into that. And another aspect that kind of might fit into this topic of diversity, I guess, comparing bigger schools with the smaller schools, specifically in this situation, the NCCAA Division I maybe versus the Division II schools. I guess I'll throw it in this section here, but in some instances, I feel like some decisions sometimes are made for the benefit of the bigger D1 schools and have an impact on the D2 schools in ways that might hurt the student athlete experiences because of the smaller schools having to make different decisions within their athletic department. Again, at least, and that's kind of been in some of my experiences. So with that being said, decisions about NCCAA matters and student athlete opportunities, as well as hearing the feedback from the Division II schools, just that those are considered just as highly as some of the decisions for the D1 schools. And I know that they're all weighed out. And again, just in some of my experiences, that's come up a couple times. But overall, from a student athlete and coaching perspective, experiences and opportunities, I really couldn't be more thankful for all the doors that the NCCAA has opened for me as a female, in particular for my education, as also for my career opportunities.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Torey. Very interesting point, and just want you to know your points are well noted, okay? And I'll make sure Mr. Wood gets to those points as well. Let's go to Martin real quick. Again, let's try to keep it around 3 minutes, and we'll go from there, because I like to hog the time. Ms. Denny talks about she likes to be the one, but I'm really the one. So go ahead, Martin, if you're there.
Yeah, definitely. I know for me, I think it came down to, when I think about diversity and what needs to happen, because at the end of the day, that's what the basis of it all is, just what needs to happen, what needs to change. When you look at a player as just a player, your perception, the way you recruit, is different. And I know for me, hands-on, dealing with different coaches, in the NCCAA, you know, their approach was way more different than it was with other schools. So I think in recruiting, in terms of recruiting, when it comes to athletics, I think that's a major part of it when it comes to, you know, getting an athlete, because we're more than just an athlete, but we're people. And when you recruit just basically on the premise of just them benefiting your program, I think that, you know, you're not as effective. But when you recruit as if they're a human, and they're an athlete too, I think that makes your recruiting more effective. Secondly, I think this is a major one that I've experienced. I did not know nothing about the NCCAA. I did not know anything about, you know, NAIA type schools or small Christian schools. So I think marketing the NCCAA in urban areas or in predominantly Black areas is one way that we can promote not only the brand, but there's actually something out there better than a Division I, Division II school, or sometimes Division III. And ironically, you hear more about Division III schools than you do about NAIA schools. You hear more about D3 schools than you hear about NCCAA schools. I didn't have a clue my whole high school experience. I did not know about the NCCAA at all. So I think in terms of trying to attract, you know, minorities or just people as a whole, when it comes to athletics, I think if we put a strong emphasis on targeting these areas, you will see that there are a lot of diamonds in the rough when it comes to kids in these areas. You know, I have a lot of friends that's inquiring about my school, but they're like, man, how do I contact their school? How did I contact the school if I don't know where to contact them through? So I think, you know, marketing is a huge aspect of trying to attract, you know, our minorities in different programs, so then it can strengthen not only their spiritual life, but also their perception of the NCCAA.
Great. That's good. And another aspect to that is obviously there are Christian high schools popping up all over the place, by the way, that we really don't hear about because they're not in, quote unquote, the associations. They're not relative to the Christian High School Association and things, the HCA, whatever it is. So there are plenty out there. And I think getting the word to them about our institutions will prove profitable, especially in the minority communities. Willie?
Yeah, so when we talk action steps, you know, some of the thoughts and some of the things I've experienced when we're talking action steps is, you know, kind of what we're starting now. You know, I was really encouraged when Dan, you know, called me about this, and really it hit before all our, you know, society right now, what we're going through hit. He was already trying, like I said, to have these conversations. And I think that's the biggest action step is continual conversations, not just a one-time thing. And what comes from these conversations and discussions, really, in my personal opinion, I don't have this platform. Maybe it's other people do, is not so much through social media and what we're blasting there, but really through my sphere of influence, which for me, you know, would be whether that's family, friends, my team, athletic department, things like that, the school. I feel like that's going to be a little bit more of a deeper conversation, because really the whole part of these conversations is to be educated. And I say this because as a light skin, you know, that's considered a Black man, it's a two-way street. It isn't just I need to educate someone else on who I am. I need to be educated as well. And I just feel like you do that through having meaningful conversations. And I just love this opportunity as we hopefully can now take that to our sphere of influences, because really the reality is this. We can't continue doing what we've always done. We have to have a different approach if we actually want to see change, and change that honors God first and foremost vertically, because then that now affects the horizontal, our sphere of influence, what we're doing daily. And we're really coaching to an accepting generation nowadays, you know, and I won't dive deep into that, but we have a generation we're coaching to, interacting with these student athletes, that they're really more accepting than I've ever seen. And so it's like, we want to get and use that influence for them, because they're the next coaches. They're the next leaders for us in our communities. And so I just think that's really important. And then as a coach, you know, right now in the NCCAA is like, let's meet people where they're at. You know, we're not necessarily getting the same type of student athletes before, where, you know, they're raised in a church, and, you know, they sat down at dinner with their families. You know, we have more of a biblically illiterate generation, you know, that for me, I'm asking about church, and they're like, well, I used to do that, but now we play sports on Sundays, AAU and other stuff. Or I never went with my parents, but I went with my grandparents sometimes. And so it's a different type of generation that the more we become educated, I think the more influence we're going to have. And to me, these would be kind of those next action steps.
Well said again, Willie. Thank you. I wrote down some things briefly as we close today, and I want to give each and every one of you a minute just to talk kind of the next steps. But I wrote down some things. I kind of pinpoint our hiring practices. Torey brought up some inclusion issues as far as divisions and where we are and how we may spend a little bit more time with one division instead of the other. We kind of cover the gamut with diversity with having women involved and being more involved in what we already know this. How we get there, again, the next steps are kind of where we want to be. The other thing along the lines of our hiring practices with institutions and schools, athletic departments, you know, whether I liked it or not, or whether I didn't like it, it didn't really matter at the time. But when I went to Tennessee Temple, when I saw another Black person, I went, oh, what's up, dog? And that was good for me, okay? That was good for my morale. I knew some of the owners at Cracker Barrel. They didn't have any Black people on the wall for many years, if you know the history of Cracker Barrel. And they didn't put any Black people, but then they started to put Black people on the wall. But then when they put Black people on the wall, they look like slaves. And I was going, dude, y'all can't be putting pictures of Black people on the wall that look like slaves. Y'all got to put Black people that have done something, you know, to Tuskegee Airmen or something. And so learning this process is a good thing. And I'm here, and Dan knows me, I'm here to help teach our institutions, our schools, our wherever our influence is, our coach, or these types of things that are important in our communities, whether, again, they be women or African Americans or minorities, people of color, it doesn't matter. What matters is that we are moving forward and making sure this happens. Let's go to the next steps just real briefly. You got a minute. If you don't finish in a minute, I'm going to cut you off. Go ahead, Miss Doctor. 16. Go ahead, 16.
I would just finish up by saying, those of you that do have women on staff in your athletic department, reach out to them, support them, encourage them, give them opportunities to have leadership training, development. And then as we look at our female athletes, you know, let's try to demonstrate to them that, you know, athletics within the NCCAA has a place for a woman who wants to have a career there, and to make that path easier for them. And then my last observation is, you know, we don't have a woman of color represented, which I think is interesting, right? And I was on the administration committee that put this group together. But I would think, especially for that woman of color who wants to be part of the NCCAA, there should be a place for her.
All right, Torey.
So my advice is just continue making decisions first with the gospel in mind, because all else should fall in behind that, and then continue making decisions for the student athlete experiences and opportunities. Without the athletes using the platform of athletics as an outreach tool, which was big when I was playing, it just wouldn't be the same. So teaching the athletes how to keep athletics in perspective of our purpose on earth will make the biggest impact on how they carry on with their lives. So I guess keep developing leaders to be Christ-like examples and provide opportunities to put what student athletes have learned within their sport into practice. So
thanks again, Torey. All right, Martin.
Yeah, I'll finish up by saying that I think it's important that we seek out the heart of God, because that will be the guidance that we will have in terms of the approach of how we assess these situations, how we attack these situations, and how do you get the heart of God through fasting and prayer, through daily devotions. So I think, what it comes down to when we come up with a game plan with the NCCAA strategically and specifically, seek out the heart of God by prayer. I think that, a lot of these problems that we have within our organization and outside the world too, we'll be able to solve simply by just seeking out the heart of God through prayer. So,
Amen. Well said. All right, Willie.
Yeah, so I would say, and this is something that's really I've had to mature through the years, is I think it's very simple. It comes down to building relationships. I mean, that's biblical. I love the two commands. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. And the second is love your neighbor as yourself. And so, you only do that by building relationships. And so, I believe that's the important key in what I think the NCCAA is about. I know that's an important key in what my institution's about. And that's really when, as a coach, I mean, that's what it comes down to. I mean, you don't win championships without building a relationship. And so, and really, you don't, as a coach, the most rewarding thing is to see your players go on to the next steps of life. And you get that reward because of the relationship you've built. And really a key part of that is listening, just being able to listen to others, which plays into my other action steps I talked about earlier of, having discussions and conversations, your sphere of influence. So relationships, I'd say where it's at.
I appreciate that, Willie. Thank you. Before I turn it over to Dan, I do want to share a Bible verse with you that I think is appropriate at this time, and it kind of covers what we've been talking about, as well as giving us moving in the right directions. Galatians 4:19 says, "My little children, in whom I am in birth pains, until Christ is formed in you." And basically what that's saying is, we're going to have to go through some birth pains for this to happen. There's going to have to be some sacrifices. I mean, across the board, not just for women and blacks and minorities, but Caucasians, you name it. We all going to have to go through some things, and so it's gonna be painful. It's not going to be easy, and it has been one of those. Birthing, for lack of a better word, time. You mothers out there who had children, y'all know it wasn't easy, okay? And we men, we just sitting there videoing it, like it ain't nothing. But it's big time, and this is big time. And as Willie said, I think earlier, as well as Martin, some of you guys have said, we've got to pray this thing through and to begin to put boots on the ground and make it happen. Don't wait for it to happen, make it happen. I like it that way. And so we'll see what God has for us. Dan, back to you. Thank you.
I just typed in the chat, I wish we had another hour. And my guess is at the end of that hour, I would probably wish we had another one. Tony, Vicky, Willie, Torey, Martin, all of you who joined us, I can't thank you enough. Your insights. I think we scratched the surface, to be very candid, but I think it's a good scratch, and I think it's necessary. Several things, just so in case sometimes you wonder, well, what do the higher ups here? What did the office here? Man, I got more yellow on my sheet than I can read right now in the next minute, but Martin nailed it. This is a spiritual battle. This isn't a political, cultural issue. Satan wants us to fight it that way. He would love us to fight it from that perspective. This is a spiritual issue of hearts. A 22-year-old just taught me that, or reminded me of that, Martin. Willie, I love the celebrate, don't force assimilation. Man, as a soccer guy, my minorities were primarily non-North American, Antiguans, Hispanics, etc. And I was guilty as a person who loved them and had blinders. I wanted them to be like, the institution I coached at. And until they helped me understand what they brought to the tapestry. I love that celebrate. I go back, Vicky, the recruit, but you used a huge word, retention. It's big in enrollment. But I made a note here. Torey, you can speak to this. I saw you at a lot of nationals. I probably was at the podium at several of those nationals at a banquet to welcome or whatever. Not once did I address women's volleyball players or women's basketball players or women's softball players. hey, you seniors, when you're done, how about considering a give back? How about considering this as a career? If the Lord would lead you, because I think sometimes they feel like we think the Lord wouldn't lead them there. That's a simple, practical step. We get that opportunity, Ben or myself or someone does. Torey, I think the diversity, so we come to this again, race, gender, and you're right. We're also very diverse in our types of schools. Not only Div 1, Div 2, but within those two divisions, our schools are distinctly different. I mean, Willie was at a Div 2 that all of a sudden overnight was a Div 1 because they started giving aid. And yet still was probably a lot more Div 2. So how we view those boxes even, I think, is healthy. The last thing is, I love it. I think it was Willie just said, it was two pieces. He said them separately, but I put them together. Have the conversation. And I think I kind of heard you say, and then stick with the conversation. Don't have it, check your box and walk away that you did your good thing. Keep having it, Tony, to your birth pains. It's going to take some hours. It may be a 24-hour, it may be a 24-month process. And I love this. You know, in Martin's thing, promoting the NCCAA. We let God do a lot of that. We let you all do that. What if we do promote to markets, quote unquote, or to places we're not at? And so Brandon and Elizabeth's minds are already chasing. So I want to thank you. This is just healthy. I have to be honest. I think I'll speak for the admin. It's better than we probably imagined. And I want to thank you for that and for this time. We're going to put prayer on it. We're going to let you go to the rest of the Tuesdays. And I hope you've been blessed and it's been good for you. Let's pray. Lord, thank you. Thank you for the time from these panelists, from Tony, from our guests who joined in. Thank you for speaking through them into our hearts. And I can speak that my heart's moved spiritually. My heart's not moved culturally. My heart's not moved politically. My heart has been moved for the kingdom. And I thank this diverse panel of age and gender and race, but experiences they have brought to us. We now need to continue this conversation with this group, outside of this group. And I think, as we heard, it's probably going to also start in our relationship with you. Let's have conversation with you about our next steps. We praise you as we did an hour ago. We thank you as we did an hour ago, and help us to continue to do both on a regular basis for kingdom's sake. Amen. Have a great Tuesday, and thank you all.